vacation for a few months. I hope you got a well-deserved rest, because after hearing Dr. Smith's list of accomplishments last year, you all definitely needed a break. So hope you're rested and ready to go again, because we have another great year ahead of us. I'm very excited to be able to once again introduce everyone to our system president, Dr. Chuck Welch. He has agreed to come and kick off our afternoon session, and I don't think I need to tell anyone this, but without Dr. Welch, ASU Newport would not be where it is today. He provides tremendous support to us, but even more than that, he has hired an excellent staff who I'm sure we're in contact with on a daily basis between HR and internal audit and general counsel. So and of course Julie, where's Julie? Back in the back. Yeah, we have a nice little hotline to Julie's office too. But anyway, we are so appreciative of what the ASU system does for all of the colleges and the university, and just very, very glad to have Dr. Welch with us today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, so I won't be back and forth. Brad Phelps, our general counsel, has agreed to come and talk about the new Guns on Campus law, and with him is his great assistant, Wendy Clark. So thank you all three for being here, and I'll now turn the program over to Dr. Welch. Thanks.
Thank you, Chancellor. I appreciate that. It's great to be with you again, as always. You hearing that feedback? Let me get away from it a little bit. They told me that my options were to kick it off or to follow Brad. And I said, well, I don't want to have to wake everybody up to hear me talk, so I definitely don't want to follow Brad. We'll go first. And then I told Sandra, I said, nah, I'm sorry, but I'm not staying for Brad's presentation either. But no, joking. I appreciate Brad and Wendy coming. Obviously, there's some significant changes there that they'll talk about in a little bit. Hopefully you'll have some good questions that they can address. The title of the talk that I'm giving at each of the campuses this week is about changing times. And I know it sounds like a broken record, because I think I probably talked about the same thing the last couple of years, but when I saw Ike Wheeler this morning, Ira, as he's now known apparently, I thought I might call it progress, not perfection. If y'all will remember, he had on flip-flops last year, and I just hazed him mercilessly over that. Well, today he has on shoes with no socks. So ultimately, we're going to get him to dressing like a normal human here before we're said and done, but just glad to see that. Yeah, I think that probably deserves, it could be a whole lot worse. You better just take that and run with it. So I want to talk just very briefly about changing times. And I think I did talk about this last year, and don't want to sound like a broken record, but about the only thing that not changing in higher education right now is the need for change. We're seeing just wholesale changes across the board in a number of different areas, and those campuses that don't respond to that affirmatively are going to be those that really struggle long term. I think I may have told you last year that our bond rating agencies, as well as some of the national associations, are predicting that a number of campuses will cease to exist over the course of the next decade and 2 decades because of tightening resources, duplication, technology, and a lack of responsiveness to that change. And obviously one of those key changes is going to be the guns on campus issue. And Brad is going to go into much greater detail about this, and so I won't get into that. The only thing that I would say to you is we would ask for your cooperation. Some of us may not be any happier about it than some of you are, but it is the law. And Brad will talk to you a little bit about what flexibility you have, what very little flexibility you have, but just know that we are committed to your safety and the safety of our students and our community members and those who come to our campus, and we'll continue to monitor the situation and work with policymakers to make sure that we have the absolute best law that is possible. Another great change that's coming this fall is the change in the way that we're funded. It doesn't technically start this fall, but it'll start the clock ticking, if you will, moving from our current needs-based funding formula to a productivity formula. And I won't get into a lot of the weeds on that because it can be fairly complicated, but I will just say this to you. We're going to radically have to rethink the way that we look at enrollment, the way that we look at student success, and the way that we look at how we operate our institutions. You know, historically, we have been primarily funded based on how many students we had enrolled at our institutions and the disciplines in which they were enrolled. And so for a number of institutions, there was this race to the top, if you will, to try to get as many students as they could possibly get enrolled in the institutions. That's no longer going to be the primary focus. Now it will not be based on how many students you have enrolled, but rather upon the success of the students you do have enrolled. So this, let's get as many as we can and don't really worry about where they come from or what they're doing or that kind of thing, that's really going to be a different mentality for all of higher education. We're going to have to focus more on, when we get those students here, the types of programs they're in, the types of students that we're recruiting, and making sure that they meet success metrics as defined by the formula. Now, success does not necessarily mean an associate's degree. It could be a certificate of proficiency. It could be a technical certificate. It could be workforce training. There's a number of different ways that that's going to be defined. One thing I want to make very clear to you is there will be no expectation from me or from the system. There will be no expectation from your campus administration. And we won't tolerate any expectations of grade inflation. Pressure on you faculty members to say, hey, you got to get these kids A's and B's and get them out of here so we can get more money. Tell you a funny story. I had a legislator say to me, well, how can we be assured that you administrators aren't going to run out and force the faculty to give good grades? And I said, have you ever met our faculty? I said, I think they'd string us up before they did that. And I meant that as a compliment, because I said the faculty take very seriously that academic integrity and ensuring that students do what they're supposed to do and earn that grade. And I said that is a concern that you should not have and will not have, certainly in our system. That said, though, we will have to be much more strategic in our enrollment. We'll have to be much more strategic in our programming, and we'll have to be much more strategic in the types of student support activities that we have in place as well. This is not going to be a formula that is defined by the success of the students and the faculty members, but rather by all of us. Financial aid, the staff that keeps the buildings in working order, our IT staff, certainly counseling and student support services, all of those will play a critical role in helping determine whether or not these students are successful. Efficiency will be a key part of that as well. There are efficiency measures that are a part of this formula, ensuring that overhead costs don't get out of whack with the cost of instruction, making sure that faculty salaries aren't out of whack with administrative salaries, and we're going to have to work very hard to be as efficient as possible. And I say all of those things because those decisions can be very difficult, and that change won't be easy. But at the end of the day, it'll be what's in the best interest of all of our campuses, and particularly in this particular campus. Now, we've already done the first run. I say we, the Department of Higher Education has already done the first run of numbers to see how the campuses would have fared if we would have already started it with funding this year. The good news, well, the bad news is 13 out of 22 community colleges would have lost money this first year. 13 out of 22 were negative in terms of their performance or their productivity, and two-year colleges as a whole were negative in their productivity and performance. The good news is not only was this campus positive, this campus was number 1 out of the 22 in its productivity of the community colleges in Arkansas. That's the good news. The bad news is we got to keep that up. So we've set this high standard that we've got to continue to chase every year. The other bad news is there won't be any new money this year that goes into that, so we celebrate it on paper, but there won't be any reality. Now, we're very hopeful. Governor Hutchinson has recommended a $10 million increase to higher education budgets for the next fiscal year. That would be the first amount of money that was accessible by any college in Arkansas in 20 years. We still got to get that passed, but if we do, then this campus will certainly stand to benefit from that. In the absence of new money, though, this new formula does have a piece to it that has base redistribution. Historically, your base funding's always sort of been very protected and couldn't be touched. That's no longer the case. So the gainers, like Newport, would literally be taking money from an institution that was on the negative end. And so we've just got, I'm not too worried about this campus. Certainly we've done very well. Was it 12% increase, I think, in productivity, which is a considerable number. But we got to keep that up and keep doing the things that we've been doing. Our system, the Board of Trustees and I have some system priorities that we're going to be putting into place this fall to benefit our campuses and to benefit in this new formula that we were talking about. The first one is a system-wide efficiency study. We are going to contract with a national entity to come in and do a study of the efficiencies of our system and ways that we can become more efficient? Are there some shared services that could be centralized and provide benefit to all of the campuses without adding additional cost to all of those campuses? Or really the hopes would be in reducing the cost to those campuses. Adam and Sandra and crew have talked already about some of these possibilities and working with the other campuses within the ASU system, and we want to see how that can grow. And so that will be a study. This is a study that's been done at other systems around the country and has produced considerable savings for the member campuses and would help this campus in pulling down some of those efficiency numbers so that they're in better line with what we're going to need for the formula. The second study that we're going to do this fall is a transfer study, and I mentioned this last year to you, but the timing is actually perfect now. We're in the process of contracting with a research entity that is going to come in and do research studies on each of you, our students, focus groups, qualitative research to say, all right, why aren't you transferring to a four-year institution if that's what your goal was? What are the roadblocks that are keeping you from transferring? Because quite frankly, the transfer numbers statewide are abysmal. 2-year to 4-year. Some of that's on the fault of the 4 years, some of that's on the fault of the 2 years, some of that's just we don't have the mechanisms in place. So we're going to contract from the system level to try to get all of that research information and then look at ways that we can create pathways to make it easier for those students to transfer. Now, obviously, my preference and the board's preference would be that they all transfer to Jonesboro, but we know that's not a reality either. We'll focus on Jonesboro, but we want a system that also we can use to improve relationships with UCA or UALR or whomever, wherever an institution that a student might be interested in transferring to. I will tell you that the new chancellor at ASU Jonesboro, who is started July 1, is a community college graduate himself. And one of the first things he said to me was, these numbers are bad, we've got to fix this. And I know he's already reached out to Dr. Massey. I know he's already talked to the other chancellors in the ASU system and said, hey, let's figure out ways to do it. So he is fully on board with this and ready to implement measures to help your students have a better pathway to transfer if that is indeed what they want to do. So we're excited about that buy-in, and excited that that's a top priority for him. This campus, and I say this every year, and I promise you I'm not saying this at every campus, but this campus really is in a good spot financially, from an enrollment standpoint, from the strategic vision that you've had, from the focus that we've had on technical programs and not getting too far away from that, the diversification of your enrollment, and you're in a good spot. But we have to continue to push that envelope. We have to continue to get outside our comfort zone. We have to continue to think outside the box to make sure that we stay ahead of that curve. There are some new opportunities that are going to exist because of these changes. We just got to make sure we take full advantage of those. So here's to a great year. Thank you for what you're doing. It's obviously paying off. It's in black and white. You can see it in the numbers, and we expect that to continue, and thank you for all of your hard work. So with that, I will now turn it over to our General Counsel, Brad Phelps.